of Mindset Monday. Today, we will be addressing mindset on education, the importance of having a growth mindset when learning. No matter what age you are never too old to continue learning and growing. Today, our guest speaker, Dr. Matthew Beyranevand, will be addressing his work with mindset as an innovative educator and talking about his experiences with learning in and out of the classroom. My fabulous co-host, Dr. Rohit Chandra, will also give his insight as an educator and learner. How can we all, as students and teachers and parents, develop better mindsets for learning and educating?
Along with my co-host, Dr. Rohit Chandra, we have a very special guest speaker. Dr. Matthew L. Beyranevand is the K-12 Mathematics Department Coordinator for the Chelmsford Public Schools in Massachusetts. Matthew is an ambassador for the Global Math Project, consults on the creation of mathematics curriculum, and a member of the Massachusetts STEM Advisory Council. He also serves as the adjunct professor of mathematics and education at the University of Massachusetts at Lowell and Fitchburg State University. He is the author of the book, Teach Math Like This, Not Like That, co-author of the book, Adding Parents to the Equation, Understanding Your Child's Elementary School Math, and his third book, Empowering Parents as Partners in Their Child's Elementary School Math, is due out next year. Dr. Beyranevand was the teacher who first introduced me to the concept of growth mindset, and he advises my TED Ed club at school. He has really helped me with my public speaking skills and is an incredible speaker. He has also been a wonderful mentor to me for the past 5 years. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation to speak today, Dr. B.
Well, thank you so much, Sachi and Dr. Chandra, for having me on here. It is quite an honor. I've been talking to my agents, been trying to get me on your show for a while now. I'm so thrilled that I was finally able to come on to your show. Based on seeing those first 2 episodes and the number of hits you got, I know that this is a recipe for success. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much. All right, so let's get started. My first question for you, Dr. B, is tell us a little bit about your professional experiences related to growth mindset. Why is mindset important as a person and as an educator?
Well, it started for me when I was a classroom teacher, and I was very successful with the standardized test scores of my students when I was a 7th and 8th grade teacher. However, I realized that many of the students were not motivated to learn mathematics, what I teach, nor were they generally excited about the learning process. It was something that was very negative to them. And within the STEM field, the science, the technology, and the engineering, students authentically love being in those classes. And then you have us, the ugly stepsister of mathematics, where they try to avoid at all costs. And so I realized that there is more to it than just the idea of the memorization of the facts and how fast can you do it. Instead, it's about the conceptual understanding and changing everybody's mindset, not only for how they learn the mathematics, but their general attitude towards education. So I went on a mission to learn as much as I could to change my own mindset as a teacher. And then I became so impassioned of the work of Dr. Jo Boaler, in particular, and also her predecessor, another Stanford professor. And I began to say, how can I change students, teachers, and parents' mindset about the way we learn mathematics so that it can shift from that negative connotation to the positive one.
That is fabulous. So, Dr. B, what exactly is the mindset that students and teachers should have in the classroom, and what benefits does it provide?
So for those of you that aren't aware, there's 2 types of the mindsets. There's the fixed mindset, and then there's the growth mindset. With the fixed mindset, many times you have a belief, at least within mathematics, that you're either a math person or I'm not a math person. You believe that I can do it or I can't do it. And also, if you make a mistake, how do you approach it? With a fixed mindset, you shut down and you say, I can't do this. But with a growth mindset, you believe that mistakes are part of the learning process. So what I believe is important is that it begins first with the teacher. The way the teacher conducts him or herself in the classroom has to be one that very much promotes the idea of growth mindset. A few things that I really recommend for all teachers is that, first of all, math is not about the speed. We don't want to reward the first person that can answer a question or the first person who finishes the test. The second thing is that, back to the idea of mistakes, when you make mistakes, and everybody will make mistakes, how do we approach it? Is it in the negative way? Nope, that's not correct. Let me move on to the next person. Or do you look at some parts of the mistake that maybe the math was done well and we can build from it? Or do we say, yes, I can see the answer's incorrect, but we can build off the learning from that? And another thing I think is really important in regards to the mindset is that the teacher, him or herself, is at the same level. I'm going to make mistakes also. I'm not perfect. I am not a, quote, math person, because there's no such thing as that. So once we get the tension down in that classroom and we're all on the same level here and we all believe that we can learn math with hard work and perseverance, then that culture can change and we can begin impacting the students.
Excellent, excellent point. And so whether in the classroom or not, mindsets on education are universal for us all. Learning should not be limited. So my next question is for Dr. Chandra. As an adult with an infectious love of learning and a wonderful growth mindset, what has your experience been with learning?
Definitely. And I'd like to point out as a physician that my infectious love of learning is not a dangerous infectious love. It's important to note that at this time. But I will say that, in terms of growth, I think it's obvious that, kids are growing and teens are growing in various domains. But, when you become an adult, you can start to get a little bit bored at times. I mean, you're in a job, you have your family perhaps, and things can become routine. And, there's what's called a midlife crisis, like, what am I doing? What do I want to do with my life? So I probably had a little bit of that about a year ago, a few years ago. I was, I'd been in my job for about 3 years and, felt like my learning curve had plateaued somewhat. And then in the fall of 16, a friend of mine who's a poet was writing ekphrastic poems, which are poems that are inspired by paintings. And she and I went to the MFA and we're looking at some John Singer Sargent paintings and William Merritt Chase paintings. And she kind of taught me how to look at paintings. She said, look for what is real, what seems accurate, realistic. And then later on, another mentor of mine, Michael Dowling, who's the artistic director at an organization called Medicine Wheel and trained under Philip Guston, who's a painter that was at BU. Michael Dowling said, look at paintings and see, what is it that you feel? What does the painting make you feel? So these two mentors kind of taught me to look at paintings. And then I got very interested in studying art history. And it became a passion. So after work, I would get excited. I would go to WikiArt. I would look at, a variety of paintings by, a specific painter, and then write a biography of the painter, and then post the masterpieces plus other paintings that I found meaningful to Facebook. And it was sort of I was learning, and then I was using Facebook as kind of a teaching tool. And that became really interesting. And then in January of 17, some friends had said, why don't we occupy Facebook with art? There was a lot of negativity going on. I was like, this is really a wonderful opportunity. And so, that's actually when I started to really post the painter biographies and then this collection of paintings. And it went for probably a year, something along those lines, where I was doing this pretty frequently. And people loved it. And I loved it. And I guess, people really seemed to give it positive feedback. And then I think I exhausted my interest in the painters that I had loved and didn't want to post people I didn't really like as much, wasn't passionate about. So I then kind of moved to travel and then started looking at countries around the world. What are the most beautiful places that one can travel to? What are cultural sites? So I went by country and, looked at Brazil, looked at, Australia, looked at India, looked at Russia, and, probably 40 countries or so. And that, that was a passion for a while. But, in both cases with art history and then with travel, I would, after work, get all excited about learning. And it was wonderful. And I was growing again. So, that's a great thing. I would say that, the joy of learning should be inculcated and should be present all throughout the lifespan. But, there are times in life that, if you have too much work to do, if there's overkill in terms of, your classes, each class is giving you a certain amount of work and together it's just too much, then eventually you're just trying to master that material and your love of learning can be decreased and you're just studying for the test. I remember that in medical school. They say medical education is like taking a drink from a fire hose. You want to learn, but you get sprayed in the face and it's not enjoyable. So I think things have changed in medical education. They're trying to pare down the amount you learn so that you're actually interested in learning. And to segue a little bit, as a bit of an aside, Howard Gardner wrote a book called Frames of Mind in 1983, and he talks about the theory of multiple intelligences. And he points out that, some people are very good at mastering material, but there are also other intelligences. So for instance, Mozart was a musical genius, and if Mozart were subjected to our school system, and suppose he were not good at math, not good at reading, would his parents be like, Wolfgang, this music thing, just focus on your studies. All right. You'll never get anywhere with this. Well, poor Wolfgang would be like, oh, so you have to recognize that not all kids may be as good at mastering the material as others. But a colleague or a high school classmate of mine who struggled a lot socially and academically is now the CEO of a gaming company. And so he was a very creative writer in high school, but struggled in many ways. And then afterwards, he's been coding for this company, and his games have sold out. He's very successful. So the people who sometimes struggle in school can do very well in life. And as a corollary to that, Howard Gardner's most recent book, I think it's called Five Frames of Mind, he looks at not only mastery, which is kind of what we're talking about in this podcast, but also that you have the ethical mind, and then you have a sort of a cooperative mind. I mean, we are wired to be, kind of empathic, and we're wired to connect with others. And, schooling sometimes can really create a situation in which you are pitted against other people, but life typically, you're cooperating more with other people. So I think it's important to think about moral education and also kind of socio-emotional intelligence. And, are we teaching our kids that in high school? Or are we stressing them, and they are sometimes, too focused on just the mastery part and not as much the other points. But so let me transition it back to Dr. Beyranevand. What do you think about parents' role in learning? And, what has been your experience with parents as a teacher?
So let me first, before we answer that, let's go back to some of the things that you said here, and I'd like to really try to tie that into education. And the first thing is the idea about making things joyful. And that's one of the things that I think is so important for teachers, that they're able to show their own energy and enthusiasm for a subject. Because if they're not excited about it, how the heck are the kids going to be excited and motivated about that?
Yes.
So I think that's important. And another thing you said that I really thought was nice is the idea that you felt like you were getting stale, so you decided to do something about it. And I think the same thing goes with teachers. If you've been teaching the same thing the same way for a couple of years, then you become stale and you regress as an educator. So it's very important that all of us as educators are constantly rethinking and trying something new, even if it's not successful, just trying to incorporate new things into the way we teach and the way we connect with kids will only make us better in the long run. Sachi, do you think that's something that you have seen teachers been able to be successful doing?
Definitely. I feel that a lot of my teachers, they'll try to incorporate ways for students to be more engaged. And it, at least for the teachers that I had this year, a lot of them didn't just focus on teaching from the book, here we go. They tried to incorporate many different activities, different ways for us to get engaged, because just like Rohit said, or Dr. Chandra said, all of us have different ways of learning. We are engaged in different ways. So sometimes we'll do more of visual learning, audio learning, and there's many different formats to keep us engaged. I have a fantastic English teacher who was my sophomore teacher, and he was amazing at showing us different videos and movies, and we did lots of interactive projects. So that has been a great experience.
Excellent. So to go back to Dr. Chandra's question about parents, parents are the most overlooked stakeholders within education, and it is also true for the idea of mindset, and in particular with mathematics, where many parents wear as a badge of honor the idea that they can't do math, and they love to share that to the world. How often do we see people say either I hate math or they can't do math, and they get so excited? But yet you never hear them say the things like, I don't know how to read or I don't know how to write. They would never admit that if that was true. So it's like a badge of honor. And the second part that makes things difficult for parents is that they learn math a different way than we learn math. And we're not going to go too far off on this particular topic here, but they because they took math at some point during their schooling years. They have an opinion on how it should be taught. And so if it's being taught a different way, usually it's met with some sort of resistance. And so it is so important that with both mindset and the way we teach, that we get parents on board, educating them about the way we do things and how they could be a supporter of growth mindset.
Wonderful, wonderful. So Dr. Chandra, I know that you are also an educator. What has been your experience with the students that you teach, and do you observe any common challenges within their learning?
Sure. So the teaching I do didactic teaching at Harvard Medical School with second-year medical students who are about to take an exam called a shelf exam in psychiatry. So they're on a clinical rotation, they're seeing patients, and then they're expected to develop a knowledge base, a fund of knowledge in psychiatry. So on a Friday, they have an exam, and the Wednesday before that, 9 days before that, I conduct an exam review session in which I give them major facts. And I am kind of telling them how to differentiate one psychiatric condition from another, and giving them major facts about the field of psychiatry in general. So the teaching is interesting because I think it is extrinsic motivation related, and extrinsic and intrinsic are concepts. But extrinsic is where you have external rewards for doing something. And here, this is teaching to an exam. Students are taking an exam. They want a high grade on the exam. So what I have set up is kind of, I'm harnessing their extrinsic motivation, in this case, to come to my session, or virtually at this point, because the last few have been virtual, and learn the material. And intrinsic motivation, just to contrast that, is where you have your own sort of wish to do it for your own reasons, not because of external rewards, but like my, learning art history and learning about travel, because I just loved it. I loved the experience. It was fun. It was exhilarating. I was growing. So I think growth itself is joyful. Growth itself, can lead people to feel happy. When you are growing, you feel happy. There's really an association there. But to go back to the medical students, they're not particularly passionate about this review session. And to be honest, nor am I, because it is focused on teaching facts for the exam. So, I use different learning styles. I'm aware of the students' different learning styles. So some are more visual. So I project the answers on the screen, and I talk, and I kind of give the answers as they look at their worksheets and they write them down. So they're definitely absorbing a lot, and they may ask questions here or there, but I don't use diagrams as much because there's so much to get through that they find it more efficient that I just kind of talk, and they read if they need to, and they write. But the feedback has been great. Just do exactly what you do. This is what we need. We want to absorb as many facts as possible in the short amount of time. It's an hour-and-a-half review session. So it works. But unfortunately, it's not something that is very exciting because, these are just facts being presented for an exam. So that's what I might add on that. So I'll give it back to you, Sachi.
Yeah, so from that, do you believe that those students are actively learning, or are they just sitting there and memorizing the facts and just retaining the information for an exam?
No, I would say, they are in general memorizing the facts, retaining the information for an exam. Those who have some curiosity about the subject may ask more questions. They'd be like, I have a clinical question. I'd say, oh, no problem. I certainly work with patients all the time, and I'd love to answer your clinical question. But others are kind of, a lot of people do not go into psychiatry from that group. Harvard Medical School, maybe 5% go into it. So the others, maybe a little bit like, look, I'm just taking an exam. But the Harvard Medical students tend to be more curious, I've found, than the medical students in the last medical school I taught at. I've taught at Harvard Medical School for 10 years and taught other medical students before that for 2 years. I won't say which school. But the other students were very much like, this is boring. Just like, give us the material and let us get out of here. Harvard Medical students are a little bit more curious about it. And that's at least good. So they seem a little bit more passionate. One of the downsides of lecturing is that if people are not at all interested, they have neither extrinsic nor intrinsic motivation, or their extrinsic motivation is low to learn the material, then if you're lecturing and you do not engage them very much, they can literally be like, this is so boring. I can't wait to get out of here. This person is just talking. I don't really care what he's saying. So, ideally, you find a hook. As a teacher, you find a hook, something that hooks students into wanting to learn the material. And in this case, it was extrinsic motivation. So that's kind of what I would say.
So I know from personal experience that Dr. Beyranevand has that hook. He knows how to get students actively learning. So Dr. Beyranevand, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you've worked with students to help them actively learn, and maybe talk about some of your music videos?
Absolutely. So one of the things which I already touched on is the idea of having energy and passion for what you teach. I think that's the first step. The second thing is I'm a firm believer in teaching for conceptual understanding. I don't want my students to be able to memorize negative b plus or minus square root of b squared all over 2a. What does that mean? Well, if you don't know what that means, then all you're doing is memorizing it so you can take the test next week, but then you'll never be able to recall it or apply it. So I believe very much in everything I teach to teach for the conceptual understanding, so students know why and when they can apply it. And if I had to choose between them being able to say, I can memorize the formula, and if you tell me to use it, I could substitute it in, or maybe I can't memorize the formula, but I can identify I need to use the Pythagorean theorem here, and then I know how to analyze it and use it, I would always take the second one, because we have calculators and the Googles and the things of that nature. So that approach is very motivating, I believe, to the students. And then the thing that you kind of led with, Sachi, is the idea of these math music videos that we have done together, and a bunch of us within Chelmsford High School. And that is just a different perspective of being able to share joyful mathematics, and just the idea of having songs and videos about things related to growth mindset, or the study of pi, or trigonometry, or girls in math, and being able to do that with students, teachers, and myself as an administrator, where we can think about math in a fun, exciting, joyful manner for everybody involved. That's just another piece of the puzzle. And the more things that educators can do, both within the mathematics field, but within all of education, to make it exciting and engaging, the better the long-term results will be.
Absolutely. And in this way, students are really actively learning. That's great. That's great. So I want to transition to our final topic, which will be about mindset during remote learning. So I'm going to give a little bit about my experience that I had. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we were all forced in a situation that, we didn't see coming, and it was difficult to adapt to the situation. And so what I found with remote learning is a lot of my peers and I were having a hard time motivating ourselves to really learn and really study, because once the grading system was all changed and it was more of a pass-fail system, I realized that we were mainly extrinsically motivated. We were studying for our grades and our tests and our GPA. But once it came to that pass-fail system, it really depended on how intrinsically motivated we were. How much did we really want to become better at the subject? Really, how passionate were we about certain subjects and certain new topics that we were learning about? So I want to ask you, Dr. B, do you have any advice for students, teachers, and educators during remote learning? What can they do to have a better mindset during this time?
Yeah, well, I'm going to kind of spin it a little bit in that the spring when we had that was very difficult for everybody.
Yes.
There was no doubt about it, especially where we had very little bit of time to prepare for that.
Exactly.
And there was not only the aspect of the academics, but the social emotional part of it for students as well, being at home and quarantined, if you will. But I do believe that for most districts, if not all districts, either moving to a remote or a hybrid model for this fall, that the online component is going to be very much better engaging. And what I mean by that is that the idea that there's going to be at least live teaching and live discussion. So when you're at home, and for example, at Chelmsford High School, it starts at 7:19, and you're supposed to be taking your physics class, you would actually be online with your whole class, live with your physics teacher. So it can be a positive learning experience for everybody involved, and you are able to get those interactions as opposed to what we saw in most districts in the fall. But as a general rule, my recommendation for everybody is to be able to set a routine so that everybody knows the expectations, and that you find a way to be able to get into a routine, both for when you're learning throughout the day, when you're taking breaks and doing other things, but also a chance to still connect with your peers and with the teachers, because you need that, again, social emotional piece, both for your learning and also for what's up here. Dr. Chandra, as a doctor at Harvard there, can you chime in a little bit about what you think are the needs for students during this remote learning time?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist. I think students are having a rough time. I think in the beginning, what I've seen is, my adolescent patients were like, great, no school, or like minimal school, fantastic. And then I think, in the summer, the beginning of the summer months, I got a bit bored. But now I think the parents are a little bit more concerned about what is going to happen with their kids' learning, because they want to make sure that kids are seeing each other. And it's so important for, social growth, for kids to really, be together. They learn, hopefully, cooperation and other things. And I think, the actual material is so important. And, if they fall behind, how exactly are they going to catch up? How's this going to work? I mean, it's really confusing. So parents, really are worried, but I mean, this is unprecedented. So I think we're all going to have to be creative and maybe slow down, and just kind of adjust expectations for where kids should be, because this really has delayed everything. I also wanted to add, and you mentioned as a physician, so I also, and I was just thinking about this, I run a culture and social justice seminar at work at my community health center. And this is a collaboration between social workers, psychologists, and psychiatrists. We have one lecture a month. And so we stopped this during the pandemic, and I think I really missed it. And so what developed, a friend of mine who's an endocrinologist in Chicago said, hey, why don't we start some sort of a discussion group? I said, oh, that's a good idea. So initially, we meet on Sunday evenings. Next one is happening in about 5 hours. And it's via Zoom. So some friends and I we started talking about COVID-19 and the science of it. We started talking about how we were adjusting to the pandemic. We started talking about how we can more optimally adjust our lives. And then, as the Black Lives Matter movement really started to gain steam, race came to the front of the news, came to the fore. And we started looking at race in America. And I think a lot of us recognize that our understanding of American history was flawed, and that there's a lot that we do not know, or that have been facts and events that have been omitted or distorted in the history textbooks. And we have just been looking at that and learning more and more, and being kind of shocked, to be honest, at what we did not know. And then we've been looking at current events, which are confusing and at times shocking as well. So this has been with adults. So I think that for me has kind of replaced the satisfaction that I got from the monthly Culture and Social Justice Seminar. And it's been wonderful to collaborate with friends and talk about things virtually. So, and I will give it back to Sachi.
Yeah, so finally, I want to have a call to action for listeners. What are the steps that students, educators, parents should take to develop better mindsets for learning and teaching? How can this be incorporated no matter what the school reopening looks like, whether it's remote, hybrid, or in person? What is your advice?
Yep, I would say for me, no matter what group you fit into, the most important thing is to change the way we praise our students, to not focus on the results, but praising the effort, because so often it is praising achievement, and we get into a mindset that you're either a math person or you're not a math person, or you're good at a subject or you're not. Instead, let's focus on praising the effort, that they're willing to try hard, that they're doing their homework, that they're taking extra time to do things. And if you change the way you praise children, effort focus and not achievement focus, that one thing could make a huge impact. That would be my takeaway.
Wow.
Absolutely. Anything from you, Dr. Chandra?
Yeah, I 100% echo that. I think that's a really, really important point. And it reminds me, at one point I was asked to talk to Asian American students at Harvard College several years ago, maybe like 3 years ago. And what I found was that the ones who, a lot of them had done very well in high school, and that's how they got there. But once they got there, 50% of them were in the bottom half of the class. And they struggled with this. Their identities had been built around being the smart one. My community has identified me as the smart one. My friends, they think of me as the smart, successful one. I'm not smart and successful anymore. I don't know who I am. That was the feeling I got from them. I said, oh, you must have all this parental pressure. And they looked at me blankly. I was like, I don't think I understand this generation. And they were like, no, it's peers. Like, our peers view us a certain way. And and I'm not that person anymore, and I'm ashamed and embarrassed. Now, that is not a good outcome. That's really troublesome. And it could be ameliorated, as Dr. Beyranevand said, if we praise different things. If kids were taught you are loved for you, we appreciate what, you should put effort into your work. You should be proud of the work you do. Process over outcomes.
Absolutely.
I mean, because what I saw was kids who put all their eggs, all of their, their self-confidence in the achievement basket, and the achievement basket fell.
Yep.
And they were broken. I mean, I was very concerned about their mental health. They were doing badly. And that's not ideal. So I think, we do put a lot of pressure on kids. I mean, I think as income inequality grows, parents are really trying to make sure their kids get into the top schools because then they might have access to the top jobs. And that's somewhat understandable. But if you put too much focus on achievement and you do not, let your kids have strong social ties, and you do not involve them in the community, if the mastery is at the exclusion of other things, then your kids are missing out on some skills that they will need in the real world, and you're exposing them to the risk of they're not doing well in the school that they are at and collapsing. So I think it's important to make sure kids stay balanced in the same way that, if I'm doing 80 hours of work in a week, I'm probably going to be missing out on something else. And I just shouldn't be doing 80 hours of work in a week, period. So stressing kids and, putting them out of balance is troublesome. It's a bad, it's sort of bad precedent to set and can lead them, towards pain later. So I would just add that.
That's great advice from both of you. So in the description, I've linked some wonderful books.
I'm so sorry, Sachi. What's your one piece of advice?
What's my one piece?
I gave mine. Dr. Chandra just said same as Dr. Beyranevand. That wasn't, So I want something from you as someone who's been studying growth mindset, who's a very smart young lady in school. What's your one piece?
My one piece would definitely be, no matter what school reopening looks like, it's really important for you to focus on what you are learning and find something you're curious about. And it may not be a subject that you're learning in school, but really find that time to develop a curiosity and learn a new thing. Maybe, it could be anything like art history, like Dr. Chandra was saying. It doesn't need to necessarily tie into school, but once you open your mind and you're curious about something and you're not getting graded on it, and it's not going to affect your GPA, but it's because you love the learning that you get from it and how your mind expands. If you can incorporate one, maybe like a learning hobby, I'll call it, something that you're not getting tested on or graded on, but you really want to learn more about it from your own curiosity, I would recommend doing that to stay engaged.
Amen. Amen.
Wonderful. Great. So in the description, I've linked some wonderful books, Dr. Beyranevand's books, as well as a link to a campaign where you can help raise money to bring growth mindset to the ACLE school curriculum, which I will talk a little bit about later. Thank you so much, Dr. Beyranevand and Dr. Chandra, for your time. You both inspire me.
Thank you. This was joyful. And this is a form of remote learning. I mean, this is a form of teaching people. So
absolutely.
I just want to point that out.
Thank you. I feel like I did an excellent job today.
You did.
Your effort was wonderable.
Thank you. Oh, yes, that is very good praise.
Your effort.
The results were I came with good effort. So yes.
Yes.
Other people may judge how this went, but good work.
Right. At least they know we came with full effort, even if maybe it didn't all come out so well.
Exactly. It was a delight.
Perfect.
Thank you to both of you.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. All right.
ACLE is a nonprofit organization with, I quote from their website, a vision to empower rural and tribal communities based on the concept of social, economic, and gender equality. One of the amazing movements they believe in is to help eradicate illiteracy from rural and tribal India and Nepal by bringing schools and teachers to the villages. Below, I have provided a link to their website and my campaign. My campaign with ACLE is about incorporating growth mindset into the curriculum at ACLE schools. Growth mindset will help cultivate the joy of learning, fortitude, and a strong work ethic in the ACLE children. This spirit will be very important to their future success. Please help raise funds and donate to help ACLE teach 3 million underprivileged children in India and Nepal how to develop a growth mindset. Thank you so much for watching.